Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Variety Gaming Podcast. Today we have our first double header title with Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2. We're also going to be introducing a new reoccurring segment, the Indie Game 500. Joined, as always, my wonderful co-host Atrax. Tell us a little bit about the games today.
All right, we got the Left 4 Dead series 1 and 2. They're pretty popular. Most of you know them. They're developed and published by Valve. From Valve, the creators of Counter-Strike, Half-Life, and more, comes Left 4 Dead, a co-op action horror game for the PC and Xbox 360 that casts up to 4 players in an epic struggle for survival against swarming zombie hordes and terrifying mutant monsters. Rated M for mature. Currently available on PC, and if you have the physical Xbox 360 disc, you can play it on Xbox 360 because the 360 store is shut down now. Microsoft is no longer running it, so RIP 360. But if you got the physical 360 disc of either Left 4 Dead 1 or 2, or you go buy them, I'm sure you can find them on eBay. The game was super popular. Left 4 Dead 1 came out November 17th, 2008. 1 year later, on the same day, Left 4 Dead 2 comes out. And I would describe it as like the gold standard for what a zombie co-op game should be. It has useful weapons, like all the weapons are useful, even though there aren't very many of them, at least in the first one. The second one, there are more weapons, and you have melee weapons and stuff. But at least in the first one, the weapons are rather limited, but each one can be useful and used. And you really do need, maybe not so much on normal, but especially on advanced and expert, you really do need to stick together and work together in order to survive. And this game is so much better with co-op. Unless you really like it, and that's the thing, you just want to play solo, that's cool, like you can. I'm not saying you can't. But generally speaking, this is a game to be played with friends or acquaintances or family or, whoever. Definitely a co-op game. And I mean, it's team building too. The game on the more difficult difficulties is really, really tough. On the expert difficulty, each normal zombie hits for 20 and you only have 100 HP. So you can only get hit 5 times by normal zombie. You need to be really, really good at the game, because there are hordes and hordes of zombies. Like imagine like World War Z. This is like where World War Z kind of came from, in terms of like hordes. And the AI is actually pretty good, especially for 2008, 2009. I don't know if you can hear my puppy whining in the background or not, but still holds up after 20 years, in terms of graphics, in terms of how the game plays, in terms of co-op and all of that stuff. I believe they have updated it. Well, Left 4 Dead 2, they definitely have updated it. It got a major content update back in 2020, which, if you think about it, the game was 11 years old at that point. So that's a good amount of time. It was called Left 4 Dead 2, The Last Stand. And according to developers, the campaign takes place as an alternative what-if ending to Death Toll, which is the first game's finale. So it's what if the survivors took a different path leading to the Death Toll finale, all of that sort of stuff. So it's kind of cool that it's still getting some content updates after a good amount of time. The first game is a classic. It's a good experience. The second one has a little bit more modern feel to it, especially after the Last Stand update. But I still really enjoy 1, and I'd recommend, if you're new to the series, to starting with 1, because it's, like I said, classic experience, and the game does tell you a story if you pay close enough attention to the writing on the wall, like quite literally the writing on the wall. Yeah, I mean, Ray, you talk about your experience as like a beginner. What was it like? Because you've never played Left 4 Dead before, which is shocking to me, especially because you've played so many zombie games. tell me about like your experience, or at least I thought you have, maybe not. Tell me about your experience going into the first one, because we played both 1 and 2 together.
Yeah, so I have played a good amount of zombie games. My first introduction into zombies was actually the original Call of Duty Black Ops in 2010. That zombie mode is where I started playing zombies, and I enjoy survival based zombies, more like round based and upgrades and things like that. So I never really got into Left 4 Dead. I played on PlayStation, so this wasn't even an option for me growing up. For a first time playing through it, I really enjoy it. It is a fun co-op experience, like you mentioned. I did try it out solo at first just to see how it would feel, and I'm not a fan of it. I don't like games like this where it is solo, just because I feel like there's more chaos, more enjoyment when there is a bunch of people in comms having a good time with it. So definitely not something that I recommend playing solo, but like you mentioned, Atrax, if it is something that you're genuinely interested in, you do really like the game and that's what you want to do, go for it. It does have some good replayability. It has the different menus where you can do not just the campaign and going through the story. They do have survival based. I think in Left 4 Dead 2, they even have verses where you can have some that are zombies, some that are humans. So that's really cool. So there's a lot of replayability to it. I'm not really the biggest fan of the fact that the guns are the guns, and that's kind of it. There's not really any upgrades to them. So if you get a combat rifle or a sniper rifle or hunting rifle, like that's it. I feel like, and again, I understand they probably went for more of a realistic approach back in 2008, 2009, but for me, I like the upgrades because 1 year later, in 2010, you had the different wonder weapons and Black Ops. But actually, now that I think about it, 2008 had World at War Zombies. And even then, that had upgrades and different things. So, I don't know. I feel like they could have done a little bit extra with the weapons in the game. I did like the fact that in Left 4 Dead 2, they added melee weapons. I'm a big fan of melee weapons in zombie games. They just make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more tankier as a player, because I like to just run in. I don't like to sit at the back and do everything. So being able to pick up a guitar or pick up a katana or a baseball bat. I think I've been a fan of the fireman's axe lately. That's been a lot of fun to use. And I like that they added that in Left 4 Dead 2. They definitely missed on the first one with that and only giving you the shove, which is in Left 4 Dead 2, but it doesn't do any damage. Just kind of gives you breathing room. But yeah, certainly a big fan of the melee weapons with it. We did play a good bit. I've got 3 hours currently logged in both of these games, so I like to think that's enough to form an opinion. I definitely do want to continue playing it as more of a, hey, let's just play something different than we're grinding, the First Descendant, or if we're playing different MMOs, we just want to hang out and do stuff. I'd be 100% down for playing Left 4 Dead or Left 4 Dead 2. They're really fun. I enjoy the story. They remind me a lot of Back 4 Blood. Now, that was a zombie game that came out relatively recently, if I remember correctly. I think actually the creators of Left 4 Dead, I think they made that game as well. Yeah, but this one was brought into, I think you were able to play this on like PlayStation and stuff like that too. Excuse me. So yeah, Back 4 Blood was a fun game that I played and got into when it first came out. And I actually take it back, it was made by Turtle Rock Studios. But it's something familiar. It looks pretty similar to it. This was a game that when I started playing it, I enjoyed it. But again, I played solo, so I didn't really get too heavily invested in it. I like the story. I like the overall feel of it. So coming into Left 4 Dead, that's the kind of vibes and the feels that I got for it. definitely made it interesting for me having the Back for Blood experience, the zombies experience from Black Ops, and then now playing this game. One thing that I also noticed is there are certain, it mentioned the mutant monsters. There's another zombie game. This shows you how much I play zombie-like games. There's another zombie game called Killing Floor 2. That has different mutants and bosses and things like that. That was really cool to see that that's something that had been developed and created before, Killing Floor 2 came out with it. So there's probably some things that they took from them. Again, it all flows together. It's nice. I'm glad that I finally got to experience it. Again, like I said, being on PlayStation, I never would have gotten this chance. And had you not recommended it for us to cover, I never would have probably thought to pick it up, just given that there are so many zombie games nowadays that are being released, and a lot of them miss the mark. And they don't know what people are looking for when they go into zombie games. And this one is just one that clearly has stood the test of time. I mean, you mentioned the 2020 major content update. This game has certainly lasted long enough and people still like it. I mean, it's still on Steam, still has positive reviews. People are still playing it, willing to play it. So, that's been my thought, and it's definitely something I want to revisit again to be able to get through the campaign, the story, and then to see how the survival feels, how the versus feels. And I think I can't remember if I saw, but I think Left 4 Dead 2 had some sort of custom stuff that you could go in, making custom maps or routes or stuff.
Custom workshop maps, custom skins, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I would love to see what the Left 4 Dead community was able to create and is still probably creating. I'm sure there are folks that are still doing stuff like that. But that's my take as a first-time player.
And see that, so to me, it's so strange you, like, as a first-time player, because for me, right, 2008, and I caught myself last episode, I said I was 10, I was 11 in 2008. So my math was terrible, on the spot math. I was 11. And this is another game that I played around that era. It was more like 2009 that I got my hands on the first one. And I played it on Xbox 360, which I did have it on the Microsoft Store because, my parents definitely would not allow me to play that game whatsoever. And we had a decent amount of property. It wasn't like a lot, but it wasn't, we didn't have just a small backyard. It was like, I don't know, it was like half an acre or something like that. So there was a little bit, right? And me and my friends used to camp out in the backyard in the summertime in the tent, and we would just run a really long extension cord from the house outlet into the tent. We would carry this giant tube TV, probably weighed like 50 pounds or whatever, carried a tube TV out there, set that out there with the Xbox. And it was super sketchy because, again, being like 10, 11, 12, 13 even, played it for a few years with my friends. And then, like, my parents would come out with the dogs just to take the dogs out to go to the bathroom or whatever, and we would hear them. And sometimes they would be, what are you doing in there or whatever, and poke their heads in, and we had to quickly, like, bring up the Xbox menu or something, like, oh, we were just switching games between, we played some Skate, and now we're playing some Tetris. Yeah, that's what we were doing. We were just switching over. We were not playing any video games that we shouldn't have been whatsoever. But so that was like the original. So playing this again with somebody who hasn't played it before brought back like just a little bit of that. Obviously it wasn't like the fear factor, but it was the good old days of playing co-op with the homies. And like I mentioned just a little bit earlier, like, there is a story. If you pay attention, you can see like the writings on the walls, and there's graffitis later on in Left 4 Dead 2. And there's a whole bunch of lore, it's kind of in the traditional Valve fashion. That's usually how they do things like that. But it's, I don't know. Like you said, the modding community has really kept it up after all of these years. And it's interesting that you mentioned Back for Blood because some of the creators from Left 4 Dead went and made Back for Blood. That's why they're so very similar. And I personally think that Back for Blood has a great formula. I think it improved on like the ideas behind how to improve the Left 4 Dead gameplay was actually pretty good, but the problem is that it wasn't like there wasn't a whole lot of content. There was literally it was like one story in Left 4 Dead was the whole game of Back for Blood. So I just don't think it was worth the price. But I think that the core ideas, and it was actually a lot of fun to play, but it just didn't have that replayability despite all of the different variables that Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 have. And I'm not entirely sure, I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure what the difference is. Maybe it's just because I started with L4D first, but I mean, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. It would be fun to do just a little bit more of a deep dive into that and like the differences between Back for Blood and Left 4 Dead. Um, but again, just kind of like going back to one because we've talked a little bit about both. Some people would ask like what would the purpose of playing one be when you can play all of the campaigns for one in two and it has like a newer feel and whatever. And that's true, but the first one has a different, I would say almost like a grittier feel. I don't know, Rhaiu, if you really felt like the difference between one and two in your just few hours that we've played this past week, but one to me has a more like gloomy, I don't want to say more polished, but like just like an older, simpler feel. It's a lot more straightforward. Obviously, there's only a few campaigns, but in two, even though I went back and played some of the one campaigns in two, they played kind of different. It was kind of interesting. Obviously, there's the different weapons that are available to you in two, and also the melee weapons, which are not available in one. But, and the special infected, there are also different special infected, which alter how you maneuver around choke points, how you play in different scenarios. Because, for example, you have the charger, which in one you do not have. In two, there are some alleys that were made in one. Obviously, they weren't really made for the mutations of two, but there are some really long alleyways, and it's just like you have to go down there. And if there's a charger on the other end of it, like your whole team is just like pummeled, and there's real unless you shoot it, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of a straightforward thing, but I don't know. That's a small example, and it's really not that big of a deal. Like I'm not saying, oh, this game is so different and blah blah blah. That's just my like kind of experience and view on it. Is one is still a classic experience, and you can get both in a pack for I believe $15. Is it $15 on Steam USD?
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
paid for it.
So $15, and that's full price. You could even get it cheaper when it's on the Steam sale. I bet you could get it for like $3 or something like that. If it's $15, I bet you could get it like 95% off and just swoop it for super, super cheap. And they provide literally hours of fun for pretty much everybody. If you want to check out the YouTube version, Rhaiu and I both played this week and we recorded our POVs, so we'll have them like up side by side so you can check out kind of what our experience was for both of the games. Again, it's cool that they updated it. A lot of people have been begging Valve for Left 4 Dead 3. It's kind of like a meme, obviously, in the Steam community. Oh, haha, Valve can't count to 3 because we don't have Half-Life 3. We don't have Dota 3. We don't have Well, now we have CS2, but I bet they'll be clamoring for a CS3 in 5 years or something like that. But and then this is the big one. They only have Left 4 Dead 3, and you could argue that if they made one in the current market right now, it would completely dominate. You mentioned Killing Floor 2 with all of the different mutations. Killing Floor 3 will be coming out soon. So I'm anticipating that one. We'll have to see how that holds up. Maybe that will get Valve to be like, oh, well, hey, there's a market in it. I don't actually know. I feel like the zombie market is pretty big. The not H1Z1, World War Z, the World War Z game is, I wouldn't say, oh, it's amazing, blah, 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 but it's really solid. It has a horde mechanic that I have not seen. Like the horde AI and the amount of bodies that are on the screen at one time is actually kind of insane. And you're just, yeah, it's true. You're just kind of like mowing them down. But I think it's on par with Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. That's the other thing that, especially for its time back then, it was really cool to see all of the different zombies running around. Like there were tons of them, and you really did feel like it was a swarm. And there's this big sense of dread. One other thing I really want to give a shout out to while I've got my mind thinking of it is the music in both games is so good. And just the sound design in general. You know when a tank is coming because the song starts playing and the ground starts shaking. You know that there's a boomer around because you hear the little piano, and then I think it's maybe it is another piano or like a bass or something. And, you know, dun no 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 no, and you hear you're like, oh, that's a boomer. And then you hear, oh, clearly that's a smoker. And then there's another song for the hunter. Like everything has its own song. When you walk up on a witch and you hear it just crying, you do get slightly stressed out because you know that if you startle the witch, she's going to run after you and one shot you and immediately down you right away, no questions asked, unless you goon her first. So just the sound design too. That's another thing that I think separates this game from a lot of other, well, a lot of other co-op games in general, but also specifically Back for Blood, World War Z, Killing Floor, and the like. Killing Floor has a lot more of like well, it has the like metal soundtrack, right? The Killing Floor has that like and you're running around like, yeah, you're like, yeah, I'm the man. I'm running around, I'm gooning stuff, I'm buying extra weapons. Yeah, I'm the man. Yeah. Yeah, and Back for Blood kind of the same thing. There's some spooky stuff, but generally speaking, it's really big and dramatic and everything. Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 have really dreadful soundtracks. Like none of the music is hopeful. Even when you win, the winning sound is like kind of hopeful, but you still have those like creepy strings in the background. And it's just the sound mixed with the storytelling mixed, like it's all in the background. It's not the forefront. The forefront is it's a zombie horde game. But if you look just a little bit deeper into it, you see there's the story. Literally, the writing on the wall tells you stuff, and the radio communications from the pilots. What happens when you reach the end from one campaign and start the next? What happened to those people? What happened to this helicopter that you escaped in? What happened to the boat guy? All sorts of different little subtle things that build the world that most people will just glance right by and don't even notice. And maybe that's just a tale of the time. We're in different times now in terms of how games are made and how games are presented. How games present themselves, but man, these games they're deep if you go there. If not, on the surface, it's just a really fun co-op game to play with your friends,
Oh
And it
yeah.
has nostalgia for a lot of people. If you haven't played it yet, get a couple of friends, whether they've played it or not, and go swoop it up. 1 and 2, Left 4 Dead, they're top tier.
No, and I really like what you mentioned about how deep these games do get into. Like I mentioned, a lot of my zombie experience comes from more survival based, wave based things. So, but there is stories to it, especially in the Call of Duty zombie. That's where a good majority of my experience is. There's when you do the Easter eggs for them, sure they're complicated and hard, but there's actual stories, and that's something that if you're just looking for a game to just play something to do with zombies, there's a lot out there. I mean, you mentioned the zombie market and how big you think there's actually a lot, and there's different types of them. You have the horde based mechanics like Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2, Back 4 Blood. There's also one Days Gone that was a big game at the time with horde mechanics and open world, and that's completely different. But then if you're looking for wave based and survivals and upgrades and things like that, again, Killing Floor 2 has more of a role based situation where you have medics and tanks and using melee or not, and all of these different things, which changes your gameplay style. You have games like, again, Call of Duty. Black Ops 6 is coming out around the corner. They're bringing zombies back. They're adding something different to zombies. So there's a lot that you can do with these games, but there is stories to be told. So if you do want to get in depth with those games, you can go look for them. It just takes some time. Like specifically with Left 4 Dead, one of the things that I thought was humorous was the writing on the walls when you get to the safe rooms. If you just sit there and take a minute before you go into the next round and just read some of the stuff on the wall, you get a pretty good laugh. I think in the YouTube version, I don't know if Atrax recorded it or not, but cool story, bro.
Yep.
From 2008, cool story, bro, is right there. And that's just the greatest thing ever. It's like, wow, are we that old that we're sitting here with cool story, bro? And it was put into a game. So, yeah, definitely take a look. Enjoy the game. It's a lot of fun. I recommend it.
Yeah. And about the story, too, in Left 4 Dead, it's not nearly as complicated as, like, Black Ops Zombies. This is more the standard. There was a contagion outbreak, and a ton of people got infected. Like, that is actually the story. But in terms of what may or may not happen to the survivors and how all of that plays out, where they go from mission to mission, and all of the little subtle hints that play into the finale. And even in the finale, like when you see the final cutscene, it leaves it kind of uncertain. And so then you find out, oh, there's actually a comic about this. And so then you can go and you can read the Left 4 Dead comic. Like it's pretty cool. There is a good amount of lore that is relatively understandable. But yeah, I highly recommend. Go buy it. Give Valve more money. They're a small indie company.
Oh yeah, that's what Valve is. So, well, thank you guys for hanging out with us for this far. We appreciate you being with us while we recovered Left 4 Dead 2. But now's the fun part. I've been waiting this whole episode because I only have 3 things to say. God bless our troops. God bless America. And gentlemen, start your engine! That's a good fun times. No, this is going to be the start of our new reoccurring segment called the Indie Game 500. So the idea behind this, myself and Atrax are going to pick a random indie game, whether that's paid for, free to play, we got a code from a beta, however we get a hold of an indie title. And the goal is for us to play that indie title at least 3 hours or long enough to develop a good opinion, tell you a little bit about the game, and showcase some of those under-advertised and sometimes underappreciated games that we find and come across in our life. So,
quick disclaimer: if you want to get your indie game on this segment, just give us some free codes at varietygamingpodcast@gmail.com, And Rhaiu and I will need one code each. You can just send both of the codes there. And hey, I heard your podcast. Yeah, we would love to have our game there featured. And we'll definitely strongly consider it.
Hey, and you will get an honest to God review. I can
Yep.
prop. If you're curious, just go back to our third episode on Once Human. We'll tell you the truth.
We will give you our thoughts. Yes, indeed.
So for me, I decided to pick up the game called Cadria Item Shop. That's the full name. It is free to play on Steam. This game was released August 2018. It is developed by Moheus Company and published by Best Kieran Global. This game is a lot of fun. It is very similar to, this is going to be a Farmville. If you ever played Farmville, similar to Farmville, so the idea is that you are now this shopkeeper. The town has been wrecked, and you're just trying to get everybody back on their feet. There are heroes in this town, but your main thing is to get your shop off the ground again. So as you progress through the story, and there is actual story, the recording footage, if you're on the YouTube version that you're seeing of me, I'm just clicking through it because this game is going to be coming from, I want to say it's Korean or Chinese or Japanese. It is foreign writing, so there are some snippets in it where the translations have not, fully been done or what have you. But the idea behind it is you're getting the shop off the ground. As you go through the story, you're meeting these different townsfolks. You're meeting some of the different heroes. And the object of it is to be able to give the heroes the weapons, the accessories, the armors, the potions, all that stuff that they need in order to go save the town or save like certain areas. Like there's a sawmill and a mine that'll have all these different little side quests that those heroes have to go down and they have to go fight them. And they have to have a certain power level. Now, you're not going to see them fighting it. Your job is just to equip them, which is really cool. There's a lot of heroes that you can equip. They have preferences on their type of equipment. So like if they prefer short swords, long swords, axes, bows, all that kind of stuff. And then there are different armors and all that. You get bonuses if you equip them with stuff that they like. They'll tolerate some stuff. It's like a yellowish color. And red is they don't want it at all. So if you put it on them, they're not going to get really any benefit from it. So I like it because it's a simple little time clicker. It's not really something that you're going to really dive into and invest a lot of your full focus on. So like for me, for example, when I'm sitting here hanging out with my wife and my daughter, and they're all doing their own little thing, I can just pull this game up for a little bit, do a few things to make a little bit of progress, and then I could jump off of it. It is a free-to-play game on Steam, so you are going to be prompted with microtransactions, ridiculous amounts of microtransactions, whether that be for resources that you're trying to get or, a VIP top-up type thing where you get increased resource generations or whatever it is. There's a market for it. There is guilds, so you can like work together. I haven't gone too far in depth in the guild system right now, but I'm going to be continuing. I have 4 hours in it, and like I said, everything's on timers too. So what I mean by timers, when you send the adventurers or you send the heroes off, it'll say, okay, this adventure is going to take them 10 minutes to complete. Well, then you can't use those heroes for something else. And when they get back, it's like, okay, now they need 5 minutes to rest before you can send them on their next adventure. So it's a little bit of management, resource management mixed in with it, because you also want those unique resources from the missions. So I think like the first one is gems, and you need gems to make the next tier stuff. Well, you can only have so many gems so fast because the heroes have to rest to get them. Well, So then you just kind of like build up your resources and then you progressively upgrade the stuff or upgrade that weapon so that way you can make the higher version of that weapon. Well, then as you're progressing in in making that weapon, now that weapon quality goes up. So you have your white, your blue, your green, your purple, and then they go all the way up to like legendary and mystic is red. Now, but the fun part is you have to decorate your shop to get increase percent on creating higher quality tier stuff. So like, for example, the dagger's the first weapon you make. You can get the dagger to blue quality just on recipe crafting. As you progressively do it, you'll be able to make it to a blue quality weapon. Well, there's still the epic version of that weapon, the legendary version, and the mystic version of that weapon. Well, you can't craft those just based on crafting so many. You have to progressively, as you're decorating the shop, you may have a higher percentage of getting that weapon to that quality. And then there's the whole, do I put this on a hero and have the hero be stronger so I can use them to go clear more stuff? Or do I sell this weapon to somebody who's asking for it and take that gold because I need that gold to expand my shop? Or I need to take that gold so I can upgrade my blacksmith or my archery range or whatever it is you're trying to do. So there's a lot of balancing everything. It kind of depends on how fast and how far you want to progress. There are quests that it does give you, so you will get some gold as rewards. You do get your shopkeeper's level does increase. So it's very much a not, I'm going to play this game for 4 hours straight type thing. Maybe at first, but as you progress, it's just you're going to get on for maybe an hour, make some progress in some things, and then you're going to go do something else or go play something else. I recommend it. Again, it's a free-to-play game on Steam, so if you're just looking for something to passively kind of wind you down, maybe even like for the evening, if you're trying to do a little bit of gaming before you go to bed, this would be something I would recommend. Atrax, what did you find?
So this is a game that I've actually followed for quite a while. I played it first back in 2023 at PAX East. It is developed by Prideful Sloth Games, and it is called Go-Go Town. It is a lot like, think maybe Animal Crossing or Sims. A lot of people say it's like Animal Crossing. I would say it's like Animal Crossing mixed with Sims. Well, Sim City. So you develop a town. I should say you start off as the mayor of the town, and your task is to develop it. There are resources to gather, so you have wood, which you turn into planks, and bricks, which you turn into, stone, which you turn into bricks. So there's that little bit of, I guess I should say Stardew Valley in there too. So there's that little bit of resource farming and upgrading stuff, and then you use those bricks and wood in order to build buildings, which you can use to incentivize town folk who visit, I should say visitors, to become town folk. So go harvest some resources, use them to build buildings, which then incentivize visitors to become town folk and hopefully stay in your town, so then you can grow to bigger and better restaurants, better shops. They have, in the beginning, there's these little shrubs. They're called go nut shrubs. And so you harvest the go nuts off of them, and then you bring those over to the shop, and then you can sell them. Then you can harvest some of the rocks to make pet rocks and sell those. So you can use that money to buy better shops and unlock things of that nature. It's a really fun game. It's super chill. It's also co-op, so you can play through Steam Remote Play. It's not like the greatest, most amazing multiplayer ever, but it's still top tier. Oh, I shouldn't say it's still good, still quality. It's currently in early access, so the developers are always open to feedback over in their Discord and things of that nature. I've followed it through a couple of betas, and now being into the early access, it's a good amount of fun. I have 7 hours in the current game, the early access version, but that doesn't include all of the hours that I played in the betas. And since the starting was kind of like the betas, then I went through and got my town stuff pretty quickly. It did not take very long to get, because I already knew what to do. So I immediately ran through and did that and got a couple of townies, and then they could sell my pet rocks and the go nuts and all of the different stuff, got some extra money, quickly leveled up. I think I'm at the ramen shop now. I just unlocked some of the ramen shop. And it's cool because there's also different vehicles that you can use in that game. So there's a truck that you can use to store stuff and take it to and from places, or you can keep stuff in your backpack and then hop on a bike or a skateboard, which is ironically a little bit faster, but that's just because the truck carries a lot of stuff. So, I mean, they gotta balance it a little bit. And there is a trinicorn cycle. Uh it's basically a tricycle that's a unicorn. And so it's like a unicorn tricycle. It's kind of fun to run around in, and it goes pretty fast. So that's that's also a fun little thing about that. But highly recommend. I believe it is. Let me check the price here real quick. It's $25. It does go on sale relatively frequently. So, swoop it up. Again, it's early access, but they're always open to feedback and things like that. They've been, especially throughout the beta versions. I mean, that's what betas are for, of course, but still, through the beta versions, a lot of the feedback was given and they have fixed a lot of the problems. So that's always good to see. And there's, of course, more that you can do. They're planning more stuff. They're planning more areas and more shops and towns and stuff like that. So always great to have one of those types of games in your back pocket for when you have like a rainy day, or you just need something a little bit more chill. The character customization is also pretty cool. It's not super in depth, but there's some fun options. The characters look kind of unique. I'm not entirely sure. It's a unique art style. It's soft on the eyes. I wouldn't necessarily describe it. It's kind of Animal Crossing-y, but a little bit more blocky, I guess. I don't know. I don't exactly know how to describe it, but it looks really nice. The animations are cool. You can set up all sorts of different tasks for your villagers. So you have, of course, your wood and your bricks that you can set up people to automate. But in addition to that, there's farms, so you can grow additional crops that you need to. There's also fishing, so you can just chill out and do some fishing if you want. People will walk around and throw trash on the ground, and you got to pick it up, or else people won't move to your town. Or you assign somebody to pick it up and take it to the dump, which you also have to build. So there's a good amount of different things that you can do in the game. You can automate different deliveries to different shops. It's got a relatively in-depth town management system without it being so overwhelming and confusing and all of that good stuff. It's nice. It's a lot of fun. Have you played Rhaiu Go Town? Have you checked this out?
I haven't played Go Town, but since you got back from PAX East, not this year, last year, 23, you said. Since you've gotten back and you've mentioned it and a few others have mentioned it to me, I've been keeping an eye on it, mainly just because my wife really enjoys Animal Crossing, and I honestly, if I were to tell her there's another game like Animal Crossing, I'm sure she'd jump on it and play it, and I would never hear the end of it. But do you know if this game is going to be coming to the Switch?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't believe. I think they're mostly focusing on PC for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is fine. If the game is only going to be on PC, that's just going to save me, that conversation. But I did want to ask, is it co-op?
Yes. So here's the thing. It's local split screen co-op up to 4 people. But you can use the Steam Remote Play feature to play local co-op online.
So when they say that it's co-op, does that mean that you and I could have the same town, or I'm visiting your town?
It would be like I'm creating a character in your town. Yeah. Because
Okay.
it's local. It's like hosted on your machine, but I can remote play and join you. Steam has an interesting little thing on what remote play can and can't do. It's not the greatest, but it's doable. It's possible. I would say though that the better way to play it would be to have two controllers connected to your PC and then like you and your wife play on the split screen.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've played Animal Crossing with her, and it's interesting. She because similar idea with what Go Town is going for. Like I've created a character on her island, and like I have a house, and it's like I've gotten mail from her sending gifts and things like that. She just ended up using like my character's area as like extra inventory space for her. So like whenever I get on and play with her again, is like I'll just come back to like the mailbox. You ever seen in cartoons the mailbox like overloaded, ready to explode, and it's like you open it up, it like shoots out at you. That's what it looks like
Boom. Yeah.
for me. But no, I've wanted to jump in and try this. I I'm hesitant on games early that are in early access with dropping money since the whole Wayfinder issue, and there's been a couple of other games that I've been burned on for spending money early access games like and that's the risk I take, so I'm never upset about it, but I have learned my lesson. I'm a little bit more cautious with it. Certainly do like the look of it, the art style you mentioned. It does have that Animal Crossing feel, Animal Crossing mixed with a little bit of Minecraft. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, a little bit more blocky, right?
Yeah, not as smooth edges. It's all about the edges.
It's all about the edges.
So it looks interesting.
And I
I
will say, from my experience, even though it is early access, it being $25, I think you could justify purchasing it and calling it a quote unquote completed game. And I mean that's always like sketchy to say because then it's like, well, that just doesn't really incentivize the devs. They're like, "Oh, well, game complete." But that being said, I do see in the Discord they're always talking about updates, this and that and the other thing. So I don't think this will be one of those scenarios where it's, like a Wayfinder where it's kind of like an online thing because this is more local. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure why it's in early access, what the purpose is. Um Yeah, I don't know because it says you can play start to end with the full gameplay loop in place. So I'm not entirely sure what else. Okay, wait, let's see here. How is the full version planned to differ from the early access version? Some of these features might be tested throughout early access. Online multiplayer, don't have that currently. Deeper and more varied management systems, more content, maps and biomes, fleshed out narrative, and more. So these are things where it's like, yes, obviously deeper, more varied, more content, more maps. Everybody wants that, and then it's like, whoa, the full version. Already, I would argue that it'll be fine, but I understand your worry about wanting to dip into an early access game. And I think if I hadn't followed this if I hadn't seen it at PAX, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't even know about it. Kind of interesting. But I
that
recommend it regardless.
yeah. Well, I think it's interesting for like the early access of this. Like I'm going through it, I'm looking at some of the Steam reviews right now, and there are a lot of people that are saying it's really good. Early access, looking forward to a game like this for a long time. There are some people that are like they've lost like track of time when they're playing this game, which I can easily see. Like if it's anything, if it the words are hard. If it is anything like Animal Crossing, which so far from what I've seen it is, and what people are comparing it to in these reviews, then I can understand how somebody would lose time in this game, because it's just from one point to the next point to the next point, and you're just enjoying that sort of feeling.
It also doesn't have the real world time restraint that Animal Crossing does.
Oh, that's dangerous.
Yeah, so you can just keep playing.
Okay, so we just don't tell my wife this game exists, is what you're telling me.
You best not let her listen to the episode. That's between you and her. I'm staying out of that one. I recommend games to whoever wants to play them and hear about them.
Well, if they do add the multiplayer co-op to where we are able to have that, instead of using Steam's remote play.
Yeah,
if we could do an actual multiplayer thing, then I would love to pick this game up, and I would love to play it with everyone, because I think it would be interesting to see how, like, you create your town and how you place things and how it's decorated would differ than I would different than somebody in the community would. That would be cool.
Oh, yeah. And there's already in the Discord, there's a vibe of that. In their Prideful Sloth Discord, there's people posting all sorts of pics of their towns and all different ones and stuff like that. So that's one of the successes of Animal Crossing too, right? And games like that, where sharing your town, sharing your whatever. That was one of my favorite parts of Roller Coaster Tycoon back in the day too. Was one of my other friends played it, and so we would share back and forth, whenever I'd go over to his house. Oh, this is the park that you built? Oh, that's crazy. Yo, I had this same coaster, but I put it like over here. Yo, whenever you come to my house next, I'm going to show you this. And it's going to be so, like, it's the same thing. Like, with Go-Go Town too. Then it's, check it out. I found this. Did you know that if you route this to this, they go super fast and blah, blah, blah. And they'll deliver this. And these Go Nuts, they're actually selling like hotcakes. This is crazy. Oh, that's wild because Go Nuts didn't sell for me. And yeah, it's that there's great potential for stuff like that in Go-Go Town. And their plan is to launch, according to their early access page, the goal is to launch out of early access in Q2 2025. So we will see next year, hopefully relatively early on, Q2, they will fully launch. And then who knows, maybe that will be one of our episodes, especially if it has online multiplayer.
No, that would be a really cool episode to have. I really hope that these folks over at Prideful Sloth do head to PAX in 2025 Q1 before they release the game. I will be going to PAX 2025, so I would love to meet with them and be like, hey, I've heard so much about your game and everything, would love to, work with you guys in the future. Prideful Sloth, if you hear this again, that's varietygamespodcast@gmail.com.
Variety Gaming Podcast.
Variety Game. You know what? We got too many handles now. Now I'm just messing things up.
Variety Games Pod is the Twitter.
See that this just lets me know that we're getting to that point in the show. So
this is why I'm here, folks. Remembering all the different ones.
Yep, that's why we keep them around. Well, thank you, folks, for hanging out with us for this episode, where we covered Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, our first doubleheader. We introduced our new segment of Indie Game 500. This will be another one to add to our rotating board of reoccurring segments. We appreciate you hanging out with us for this episode. Take a listen to us at Spotify, Apple, and YouTube if you want to see the actual video gameplay. Again, Atrax is going to be showcasing our Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 compilations, along with some recorded indie game footage. So take a look at those if you'd like. Rate the show. Tell us what you think of it. Tweet at us on X. That's at Variety Games Pod. I got that one right.
It's because it's written down.
Yeah. But honestly, tell us in the YouTube comments or on the Spotify question. Hope you have a good one. We'll see you next time.